You are about to witness history in the making.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another Pop Culture Gamers podcast. This is show number 126. My name's Haydn, and I'm on my own. This week, obviously, football didn't come home, unfortunately. We decided we were going to not record on Sunday so that Steve could watch the match. But I'm here on my own, just recording this one for you guys, so you've still got some content out there. So just as a bit of a catch-up this week, I've been to the cinema first time in about 18 months to see Black Widow. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But it was really nice to get back to the Empire Cinema. I was in the top row, the very furthest part of the auditorium there, and had what was effectively a massive armchair to sit in with, which was an electric recliner as well, so it was absolutely fantastic, and it only cost $6.99 per ticket as well. My son enjoyed the movie. It was absolutely brilliant, well worth going there if you do want to see any movies and you're in the sort of like Richmond kind of area. Anyway, without further ado, let's go on to Gaming This Week.
No longer a dream, but a reality.
Okay, so Gaming This Week, and first bit of news up for you is about Elite Dangerous. So anybody who's on console and playing that game, you need to really hold off because Elite Dangerous Odyssey Update is indefinitely delayed while Frontier concentrate on getting the base PC game performing correctly. This has been released in a press release from David Braben of Frontier Games. He said, ultimately, we believe it's right to focus our efforts on the core Elite Dangerous experience for the platforms that we have released on. Before opening up to more, we know that the work that we do to improve players' experience on Elite Dangerous Odyssey on PC will benefit other platforms in the future, but the dates and details of the console platforms are going to change. We do not want to rush into confirming that any dates and changes this has on our console release, as we must remain fully focused on the core Elite experience. Only when we feel that the foundation on the PC release is solid will we be able to relay our console roadmap on top. So if you've already got Elite Dangerous for the consoles, I'm afraid it's going to be a while before you're going to get Odyssey, but it's good news for all of us PC players. In terms of new releases this week, we've got Curved Space on the Switch from Maximum Games. That's on the 13th of the 7th. Then following on from that on the 16th, we've got Where the Heart Leads on the PS4. Also F1 2021 on the PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One and Xbox Series S and X. There is also The Legend of Zelda, Skyward Sword HD on the Switch, and Gravitational on the PSVR. If you've got Epic, then there's some good games to get this week. So up until the 15th of July at 4 p.m, there is Bridge Constructor, The Walking Dead, and Ironcast. And then after the 15th until June the 22nd, there is Abduction from the creators of Myst and Offworld Trading Company. So there's a couple of good games there for you to be having a go at. Gaming this week, I've been basically playing Marvel Avengers, sort of like a kind of a bit of a theme, I think, this week has been all things Marvel for me. It's been a while since I've played this game. I completed it on the PS4 originally, and this time I'm back, but on the PC, so I'm going through the campaign again. If you want to see some footage of what the game's like, then you can look at our YouTube channel, where there's about an hour worth of that there. Don't forget it's youtube.com/popculturegamers. Don't forget to also like and subscribe as well. In terms of the game's had a controversial release, but is due to it being basically released as a service. People weren't particularly happy about that. Now it's available quite cheaply. You can pick it up from various places at a reduced rate. And it is good value because I personally think that the main game is actually fine in itself, plus the fact you also get the expansions for free on the game as well. I never had a problem with the base game. You know, it gives a good intro to the character of Ms. Marvel, who's not somebody we've seen in the MCU so far, but we do know that that character is coming, I think, in Phase 4 as well, and it gives a proper origin storyline to that. There's loads of variety in equipment and different game modes for you to do. As with many sort of RPG kind of games, there is there is white, green, blue, purple and gold equipment that you can actually get and unlock, and some of the equipment you can actually raise up a couple of levels or up to 10 levels in some cases. There's plenty to unlock skill wise, so it's a good sort of like bit for the RPG kind of fan as well. Graphically it looks really nice, it's very nice looking, it runs exceptionally smoothly. The costumes cost a lot. If you want to do any in-app purchases, you can buy different versions of Iron Man or Captain America or whoever's costume, but they do cost quite a lot and are effectively cosmetic. But as I said before, the expansions are free, so that's a bit, to and fro in terms of the cost of where they would actually recoup some of the money. I'm still not sold on it as a game, as a service, but as just a straightforward single-player game, I think it's fine. If you want to do a grind and do the Destiny sort of dance with it, then it will be challenging to get your characters to level 50. I think that my highest character was about level 12 by the time I finished the campaign, with a power level of up to 150 at the cap. It's not a bad game and worth a look, and if you're a Marvel fan or not, but the familiarity with the characters will probably be beneficial to you for playing that game. Okay, so it's a really, really short gaming section this week, but hopefully on the weekend we'll be recording again and you'll get a little bit more information. So until then, we'll move on to movies, TV and streaming.
In quest of a better life,
Alright, so movies, TV and streaming, and first up, a bit of news about Blade Runner anime. So this is one for Steve really, but there is going to be a Blade Runner anime which will be bringing back a 2049 character. So the full cast of the Blade Runner anime, which is known as Black Lotus, has been announced. It's been revealed that Adult Swim and Crunchyroll, that the cast is led by Jessica Henwick. The Matrix 4 and Iron Fist actor is also set to play Ellie, a female replicant created for an unknown secret purpose. Succession's Brian Cox is one of the show's biggest names. He will play Neander Wallace Sr., which is Neander Wallace Jr.'s character, which will also be on the show, but played by Wes Bentley. So that, I think it was Gerard Leto who originally played that character. The anime takes place in 2032, 13 years after the events of Blade Runner and 17 years before 2049. And as you may have seen from the cast list, one of the 2049 characters makes a return, as in terms of Neander Wallace. So that's going to be really quite interesting. In terms of cinema releases, on the 16th of July and onwards is The Purge Forever, Space Jam: A New Legacy, Escape Room Tournament of Champions, Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised, The Croods: A New Age, The Birthday Cake, and Deerskin. In terms of Blu-ray and DVD releases, there's a couple of good 4K ones coming out. There is Doctor Strange or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. That's in 4K. Looper's in 4K. Phantasm 40th Anniversary Phantasm Sphere Collection is out on Blu-ray. Snatch is on 4K Blu-ray, and the very excellent Mr. Dundee is on DVD. In terms of cinema charts, at number 5, a new entry is Nomadland. At number 4 is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Didn't even know that had been released. At number 3, staying in the same position as Zack Snyder's Justice League. At number 2 is Mortal Kombat 2021. And at number 1 is Godzilla vs. Kong. For Blu-ray and DVD releases, we've got Doctor Who The Collection Season 10 as a re-entry. At number 4, down from 3, is Godzilla vs. Kong. At number 3, a re-entry is Space Jam. At number 2, up from 72, is Logan. And at number 1, a new entry is Mortal Kombat 2021. So, in terms of what I've been watching this month, or this week, I should say, I picked up Lucy on 4K UHD a little while ago, and I've been watching that. So, this is a movie that's starring Scarlett Johansson. And I'd forgotten how good this movie is. The basic story is that Scarlett Johansson's character is kidnapped and implanted with a packet of a new drug in her stomach to smuggle into another country. During a captivity, she is assaulted by one of her captors who's, I think, supposed to be a triad. And the drug bag breaks, causing her mind to open up beyond the supposed 10% processing power that all humans have. Her quest before she dies of the drugs overdose is to reach 100% mental capacity and record everything that she's learnt before being captured by the triads that had planted the drugs within her. It's your basic kind of popcorny kind of movie. It has some interesting insights into theories about how our minds might work and what they might do if we were able to improve our cognitive processes beyond the supposed 10% maximum processing power that we actually use, although a lot of that has actually been shown that we actually do use 100% of our brain, just not 100% of the time. It's basically very much a what you see is what you expect to get movie, and there's nothing the matter with that. Those can quite often be very entertaining. There's some interesting bits where her powers grow so much that she can actually time travel in it. It's not very believable, but it's a good story. It's enjoyable. It's worth a watch. If you've not seen it before, if you have, it's worth a rewatch. If you've not seen it for a while. So there you go. Second movie, obviously I mentioned before I'd been to see Black Widow. So this is Scarlett Johansson's swan song as the Black Widow herself. I'm not going to give too much away or talk much about it. The movie is very much what you would expect it to be. It runs according to the normal Marvel formula that most Marvel films do these days. But it does have a slight taste of the Bourne Identity kind of movies about it, because this is more spy rather than superhero based, although there is superhero activities that go on in there as well. And there is also the Red Guardian as one of the characters who's Russia's version of Captain America. It's great to see that Black Widow's finally got a solo movie, and she was well overdue it. We just need Mark Ruffalo. And obviously Hawkeye's got a series coming, but Mark Ruffalo to get his own Hulk movie now, even though there has been 2 previous Hulk movies, only one of them was really linked to the MCU activities. It's set, the events are basically after Civil War, but before Infinity War. There's loads of action, as you would expect, loads of CGI, all of that sort of stuff, all that good old Marvel goodness, or if you don't like it, then you probably won't be going to see it, but if that's what it is what it is. It doesn't pretend to be anything else. I think that there are definitely Easter eggs in there. I think that there's a hint of the possibility of a return of the Cap, to be coming in maybe in the 90s or early 2000s to fight against Red Guardian. I think that's what they were sort of hinting at, which might fit in with Captain America's quest to take back the Infinity Stones back in time and his travels before he finally settles down and decides where he's what era he's going to live in with Peggy Carter. There are changes to the Taskmaster, which, if you're a big fan of the comics, obviously the Taskmaster is, one of those well-known sort of characters. And it may be quite jarring for a lot of people because while there are a lot of similarities, there are also a lot of changes, some of which are revealed at a late stage in the movie. There's Yelena, Natasha's sister, clearly set up for the events of the Hawkeye series that's going to be coming. We know that series is in some stage of development. And I think that her sister will probably be coming in on Team US Agent, who was, if you've not seen the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, then US Agent is the second Captain America, basically. But he fell from grace and then became a US Agent after that. So, yeah, so lots and lots to go on there. Like I said, I'm not giving away any plot secrets or anything like that, but it is what you would probably expect. Whether or not they make another Black Widow movie, who knows? It would be nice to see. I think it was a waste of her character to kill her off. There was no real good reason to. And despite the fact that, we like Hawkeye, he was probably slightly more useless than Black Widow was in the movies. In terms of that's it really. So go and see it, watch it on Disney Plus, whatever. See what you think. The last thing is, I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive in terms of the Loki series. If you have not seen the Loki series, then skip forward probably a good 10-15 minutes because I'm going to talk about that now. But basically, we're on episode 5 of Loki, and we're one episode away from the conclusion, which is tomorrow. So I'm going to put it down on the podcast of what my theories are of what we're probably going to see in the episode tomorrow. So this has been a really good show throughout. There's loads of Easter eggs that are just littered in every frame almost of this show. In the absence of the other guys, I think I'm just going to go through a bit of a spoilerific kind of thing, because I know that Steve hasn't seen it or anyone. So this is it. This is your last chance to start skipping ahead. I'll try and put a note somewhere in the description about when to skip ahead to if you don't want to listen to the Loki bit. So you got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. Anything now is going to be spoilers. So, following stealing the Tesseract and escaping in Endgame, Loki's captured by the Minutemen of the Time Variance Authority, or TVA, for the disruption of what's known as the Sacred Timeline. At the TVA, Loki finds out not only are his powers useless, but also Infinity Stones themselves. Many of the TVA operatives are using Infinity Stones as paperweights from various different branches of the timeline. There is a character called Morbius M. Morbius, and the M stands for Morbius as well, which is played for Owen Wilson, stops Judge Renslayer from purging Loki to use him to help track down another variant of Loki who is killing the Minutemen. After trying to escape, Loki discovers time moves differently in the TVA, and they can make people go into time loops and make temporal prisons and all of that sort of stuff. and also discovers about the fact that Infinity Stones basically mean nothing there. Loki's initially assists the TVA to track down the variant, but then uses the opportunity to escape following his variant, who ends up being a female version of himself, who was snatched by the Minutemen from Asgard when she was very young. And that was one of the predictions that I did a few weeks ago on the show that I was hinting at when I was discussing Loki. After raiding the TVA, which is empty due to the variant Loki creating multiple Nexus events, and after initially trying to kill each other, Loki and Loki find common ground and join forces to escape the Nexus event that they are stuck in on a planet called Lamentis 1. The only place that they can really hide from the TVA is basically a Nexus event, or an apocalyptic event, in other words. The couple get caught again just before the end of this event because their plan for escape doesn't work. But the TVA track them down when they almost cause a Nexus event separate to the one that they're already in, and they're taken back to the TVA. Loki, the female Loki, who goes by the name of Sylvie, which we'll refer to her as Sylvie from now on, informs Loki that all of the Minutemen, rather than being created by the TVA, are variants like themselves, so people who cause Nexus events. After being held and interrogated, Loki and Sylvie are sent to confront the rulers of the TVA, characters known as the Timekeepers, which are obviously from the comics as well. Sylvie and Loki try to kill the Timekeepers, only to find out that they're robots. In the ensuing battle, Loki gets purged, which doesn't actually kill him, but sends him to the end of time, where he runs into immediately 4 variants of himself, including a black, more Thor-like looking like Loki, because he's obviously got Thor's hammer, an older Loki, young Loki, and Crocodile Loki, which was really weird. Sylvie, who thinks that Loki is dead, interrogates Renslayer, and before she gets captured, steals a time pad and prunes herself to join Loki at the end of time, because Renslayer actually releases it where people get pruned to get sent to the end of time. So at the end of time, Loki meets different versions of himself and joins them for their hideout to be basically invaded by the character of President Loki from the comics and his army. Old Loki, played by Richard E. Grant, helps them escape, and they all run into Mobius, who had turned traitor to the TVA and had previously been pruned, but he found Sylvie and united her to go back with Loki. Loki and Sylvie discovered that the person behind the TVA is actually protected by a smoke monster called Aliath, and to get to the head of the TVA, they've got to basically defeat the smoke monster. Loki and Sylvie do defeat the monster, and the gateway opens to the Citadel at the end of time, and there are some, there's a flash of the Citadel, and that's the end of the episode. So that's the end. That takes you right up to the end of episode 5. So tomorrow's episode 6, runs on from there. Now, what I'm going to say is there are some really great moments in the show, as for example when Loki sees the infinity of the TVA, the city that they sort of live in this space, whether it's a enclosed universe, part of the quantum realm or whatever. And also when Loki sees his own death in the sacred timeline. There are some really good dynamics between Loki and Sylvie, with her character being enough like him and enough not like him to be entertaining. There is a romance story going on between Loki and Sylvie, so effectively Loki's fell in love with himself, which would be quite appropriate for him. As you would expect, the show's littered with Easter eggs, and there are references to numerous Marvel movies and comics, and a few blink and you miss it sort of references as well. So one of the things was about Frog Thor. And in one scene, and it's literally about 2 seconds, you see a version of Thor as a frog trapped in a jam jar underground. This is sort of like a cut-through shot, very near Thor's hammer as well. But why that's particularly relevant, obviously Frog Thor's in the comics, but also if you cast your mind back to Thor Ragnarok, when Matt Damon was playing an actor playing Loki, he mentioned about, do you remember that time, Thor, when I changed you to a frog? So it's a nice little nod back to that. And evidently they even got Chris Hemsworth to do the sounds of Frog Thor for that, which he actually did for free just because, you know, it was his sort of character anyway. So that's really, really quite a nice one. And there are loads of other sort of things like that. You know, there's reference to like the Thanos helicopter, which was probably one of the worst moments from the comics and all of that sort of stuff. But you can see all of those things as actually a nod to the ship, I've forgotten what it was called, that was supposedly the US Army tried to turn invisible. That turns up at the end of time, and stuff like that as well. There's absolutely loads of stuff. It really is one of those shows of, if you know about Marvel, you will pick up lots and lots of different things. There are some things that I've watched some of these episodes several times now, and I'm still picking out certain little bits from there. And yeah, it's it's really great. So, as you know, I like to theorize about how things are going to go, and this is probably, this is one of those shows that's really, really ripe for this. So, a lot of the theories at the moment, if you watch YouTube, that sort of thing, everybody's banging on about, it's going to be Kang the Conqueror. They're going to be shown in this episode. And I think that that's a misnomer completely. I don't think that in the next episode, Kang the Conqueror is going to be identified as the big bad for this show. Because unless you're a Marvel nerd or geek or whatever you want to call yourself, you've probably never heard of Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is a time-travelling enemy. We know that they're going to be the new big enemy against Thanos. They're also, I think, a descendant of Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four, who we've not even had yet. So, but many, thousands of years later, sort of like descendant. Excuse me. So there's going to be all sorts of, reveals about Kang the Conqueror, but I don't think that this is going to be the time that they're going to reveal it. However, I do think that there is a character that we all know who is going to be the bad guy. Now, in terms of Loki in mythology itself and in the MCU has always been a catalyst for change. And Loki throughout this show has been on a character redemption arc. And there is a lot of imagery in terms of his previous journey and that of Thor's from the movies, which are very, very similar to the redemption arc that Loki is going through in this show. Loki has is saying he's rejecting his glorious purpose, more or less, and he's not as selfish or portrayed himself as selfish as he was because of his feeling towards Sylvie, the female version of him. Whether or not she actually ends up being the actual female Loki, because no one else has ever seen a female Loki before. But having said that, though, nobody had also seen a crocodile Loki. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I do think that Loki is going to be the bad guy at the end of Loki. I don't think it's going to be our Loki from the series. I think it's going to be a variant of Loki, or what it might be is our Loki now in the future, as it were, because obviously time, it's all that, as Doctor Who would, do it, the timey-wimey sort of stuff that goes on in these sort of shows. But I think that Loki's probably going to be the big bad guy of his own show. And whether or not our Loki has redeemed himself or not is going to be an interesting point. So I think rather than Kang, the big bad is going to be Loki in this show. So I think obviously we will hopefully get the answers to that this week. I think the other thing that we will see is actually Loki destroying the TVA, and either Renslayer or probably more likely Mobius travelling back to the beginning of time and setting up the TVA for Loki to rule. That is what I think will happen in this, because in the comics there is the thing of the last agent of the TVA travels to the past and starts the cycle of the TVA at the beginning of time and allows the timekeepers to come into being. So it's going to be really interesting to see if my theory is correct or not, but we'll just have to wait and see tomorrow. Like I said, we will find the answers out. One thing we do know is that Loki's going to be coming back for a season 2. It is a thing. And as a quick footnote as well, Rich D. Grant's character talks about the time of Thanos and his experiences through what is Endgame. So effectively, or Infinity War and Endgame, where Loki gets his neck broken and killed by Thanos. According to the Rich D. Grant Loki, who is known as Old Loki, he projected an image of himself so realistic that it even convinced the Mad Titan. Now, I think what might happen is Loki will defeat himself as the leader of the TVA, but I don't think he will take over the TVA. I think he will rejoin the timeline where he left it when he picked up the Tesseract and carry on with his life. But I think that when he gets to the Thanos incident, that he will do what Old Loki says he does in the episode to save himself, and that will be how they bring back Loki back into the MCU. But I think then the timeline will differ to Old Loki. So I think that they've already told us how they're bringing Loki back into the MCU. That's just my personal view. Whether or not other people agree with it, I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know that MCU's not everyone. It is something that I absolutely love. And I just haven't had a chance to really air my views in terms of this show, where I think it was going to go. But I've been thinking this for a few weeks now. So let's wait and see tomorrow. Can't wait to see it. Anyway, let's move on to listener questions.
John, what's happening to us?
Okay, so listener questions, and he might not be here with us in voice, but he is here with us in keyboard skills, because Mark's question for the week is, PCs are often called the master race when it comes to gaming, but what do you consider are the pros and cons? So I presume, Mark, that you mean the pros and cons of owning a PC. So what I'm going to split this up into a few different things. I think in terms of pros, where the PC has the advantage is, if you have the money, and that's a big if, the PC is the most powerful thing that you can basically play games on, because you can, if you can afford the best graphics cards, the best processors, the best memory, all of that sort of stuff, it's going to be able to process everything. It's going to be able to push more frames. It's going to be able to push higher refresh rates. It's going to be able to push more polygons, everything that's there. So I think that is that's where the advantage for the PCs comes into direct terms of gaming. The second thing is that, effectively speaking, most things will work on a PC. You can use a PlayStation controller, you can use a Switch controller, you can use an Xbox controller, you can use a Steam controller, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a whole host of PC specific accessories that you can use as well. So that's another great advantage. The customization of PCs, you can do small form factors, you can do massive towers, all of the RGB, all of the peripherals that you can add, the versatility of PCs. A gaming PC will also be a monster office PC as well. You can mod games easier on a PC and more games on a PC. You can run multi-screens. You can have, Forza Horizon being in wraparound sort of screens if you've got enough screens and processing power, all of that sort of stuff. That's where the PC really comes in. Also, you can get loads of games for free, and also the latest games are normally cheaper on the PC than they are on the consoles. Excuse me, because you don't have that console sort of markup from their store or from producing a disc. Plus the fact PCs have now effectively gone more or less totally digital. So, and a lot of the stores are very stable, like Steam. Microsoft's finally stabilised after having, games with Windows and all of that sort of stuff as well. So, you've got Epic, who give away games free. You can get Humble Bundle, where you can get several games all at once for like £10 or £12, for a month, for, was it about 12 games for a month, which you keep forever, and all of that sort of stuff. The disadvantages of PCs, probably a higher learning curve for people to use, although it's not that particularly that steep these days. You don't have all of the disadvantages of having to remember IRQ settings or what sound cards you've got and all of that, because having MS-DOS games, all of those sort of things, all of the old hardware compatibility, blah blah blah, all of that sort of stuff, it's all in the past now. Generally speaking, most of it is pretty easy to do. There is still some things that happen on a PC which you can't explain. PCs, I don't think, have more of a propensity to breaking down, but there's always that risk. But you can fix it yourself. Hell, you can even build your own PC, which is another great big plus. So you know exactly what's going in it, rather than the console that you've bought for Sony or Microsoft that you don't know what is going in there. All that you know is it's so good. You could also overclock PCs. That's another thing that I forgot to mention as well, which is another really great advantage to PCs. But the cons are obviously horrendous cost for a gaming rig. I mean, when you look at, some people who have paid £2,000 for a 3090 at the moment, when it should be like £1,300. It's ridiculous what people are paying for graphics card prices. They're paying way over the odds just because, for more or less bragging rights. It's a bit daft. Whereas if we didn't have all of the problems with the scalpers, which we've also got with the consoles as well, those would be much cheaper. But even so, you're still looking at £1,300-1,400 at recommended retail price for a graphics card. That's way more, 3 or 4 times more expensive than what you would be paying for a console. you could buy a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X and still have change from a 3090 graphics card, even before the scalpers started to, and the Bitcoin miners started to, artificially raise the price of these. So those are, I would say, probably the biggest disadvantages. If you like physical media, they're not a good thing nowadays either, because obviously you just don't buy disc-based games anymore. But, and they're also, they're probably always on the internet as long as they're switched on, which is not what some people like. But then again, I think the new consoles are both like that more or less anyway, and the last gen was more or less like that all the time. So, yeah, I think that's it. Obviously, you've got more consistency in terms with consoles because the hardware is more or less always the same, which is really great. But and programmers probably know how to program it, for that. But if you can afford to get the 3090 with the i9 or the Ryzen 9 sort of processor, and the super fast RAM and all of that, you've got a gaming experience like no other. There's no PC player in the world who wouldn't like a 3090 graphics card, because they are the best. There is no doubt about that. And if you can afford it, why not buy one? My issue is just don't buy one when in the current market, more than don't buy one, just because of the artificial markup. But hey, you might be able to sell your old graphics card and get an artificial markup on that and offset the cost. So, there's pros and cons there, because that's the other thing as well. It's so easy for upgrade. Whereas, what can you do on a console? Well, at the moment, stick in a USB hard drive and another controller, and that's your upgrade path. PlayStation 5 will have the stick in a new NVMe drive at some point if they ever switch that on. So, yeah. But, I'm a PC Master Race player, I would say, more now than ever before, although I still do a lot of console gaming. It just depends upon what mood I'm in, where I want to play, where I want to sit, all of that sort of thing. Okay, so Mark, second question is, if you had to give up all of your gaming devices, console, PC, handheld, bar one, which would you keep? My PC. No doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt. If I had to give up all my devices, A, my games library is biggest on the PC. B, I can play more or less every game on the PC from all of the consoles, because obviously if it's on PlayStation Now, I can play PlayStation Now on my PC, and I can also play xCloud on PC as well, so I wouldn't miss out on some of the PlayStation games and a lot of the Xbox games, and a lot of the Xbox games are actually already on PC anyway. So yeah, definitely I would keep my PC 100%, no doubt, full stop, end of paragraph, the end. Okay, so Jason Toon asks, hand on heart, what's your favourite console? He understands that the consoles are better than ever, but whack those nostalgia goggles on and tell us your favourites. His one is the humble Game Boy Color will always be one of his favourite consoles. Game Boy Color was a good console, I'm not going to argue with that, but I've never been a big fan of handheld gaming. It's just not... I think it's a hangback from when I was in my 20s. I would get more criticism of people for playing video games because that's what kids did. Nowadays, video games are played by people of all ages, but certainly in the circles that I was in, I was like alone, more or less. There was like a couple of us who played games, but not many. So as a result, that sort of probably impacted on me being like a mobile gamer, which is why I don't, particularly play my Switch other than on the TV. Just as an example. In terms of what my favourite console is, that's a real tough one because I can think of two, and I'm thinking consoles rather than things like the Commodore Amiga or the Amstrad or anything like that, the ST or whatever. So it was like a half computer, half console sort of thing. I'm thinking that the best console is between the PlayStation and the Xbox 360. And I can't make my mind up which one. I'm tending, I think, to err on the side of the Xbox 360 rather than the PlayStation. The reason why I say both of those is because they both were milestones in my gaming life. Because the other than the CD32, I would say that the first games console I'd owned since the Commodore 3000H, which was pre the 64, Commodore 64, I would say it was the PlayStation console, and it was a quantum leap forward because you had the CD drive and, wow, look at Laura Croft, she looks so realistic to a, 20-year-old. And we know what the graphics are like now, but we thought they were amazing back in the day, and they were amazing back in the day compared to what we thought, what we liked, or what we'd seen before. So that was a landmark console as far as I'm concerned. And then you had the fantastic games like Wipeout to play on it with that soundtrack as well. It just blew the experience of gaming out of this world to where it had been, even on the PC, I think. It just came out of nowhere, this strange little grey box with a flip-up lid that you put a black disc in, and then it played these amazing games. So that one is really, really close to my heart as a console. And then the 360 is, because I lost my way in terms of gaming sometime during or after the release of the Xbox console. I think it was because it coincided with me getting married, starting to do more, couples, grown up kind of things, and people who I was hanging about with or whatever, not being into gaming, and actually none of the stuff that I was, which is why I ended up not hanging around with them anymore. All of that sort of stuff. The 360 snapped me back. It snapped me back into the gaming world. It made, it was, I think in itself, as impactful as the PlayStation had been in its own way, because it brought in that whole, I know it was done on other consoles before, but it brought in that whole online gaming into a much higher level. And the games were fantastic on it. When you played Halo 3, I know that it was, a while before we got that, but when you played Halo 3, what a game that was back in the day. So yeah, I've got a lot of love for the Xbox 360, and that went strong right the way through its through its line. And I think the PlayStation 3 as well was very similar, but I just think that the 360 really had that je ne sais quoi that the PlayStation didn't have. And ironically, the PlayStation did have the Blu-ray player on there as well, which would have been a great boon for me, but I was more interested in getting the 360 because that is what I saw as being a better console, and it was the most popular one at the time as well. But, you know, it's like now, my 360 is not plugged in. My PS3 is, ironically. So, and I still play on the PS3 very seldom, but I do play on it. So, yeah, interesting. Good question there from Jason. So the last question today is Scott Kidd asks, is it me, or is this year just got not good games coming at all? No, this year's rubbish, pretty much. There's not a lot of good games coming. Obviously, we've seen some from the announcements from Microsoft et al. But in terms of gaming, I think that this has been probably one of the quietest years in the last, 10 or 15 years of gaming. I think that this is probably one of the worst years in terms of, super releases that are coming out. But then again, it's not that long since the PS5 and the Series X were released, so it's not also surprising to think that it's going to take time for development of those consoles. So, yeah, interesting one. But we're going to have great games coming on these consoles, and there are some great games that have been released so far this year as well. Don't forget, there's a lot of good games out on the existing consoles, whether or not they are, updates from the PS4 or PS5 exclusive, or PS5 developed games like the Miles Morales Spider-Man or the remaster of the original Spider-Man game, that sort of stuff. We do have some really good games. There's Returnal, which is a fantastic game. It's just not my cup of tea. So there are some good games out this year, Scott. It's not as prolific as it has been in other years, I think. That's probably the best way of putting it. But hey, I think that we could all do with a year just to catch up on our constantly enlarging back catalogue history, and maybe catch up on some of those games and achievements that we've maybe missed out on in the past. So a quiet year's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so that's it for this week. Not many questions in, but if you want to get in contact with me, you can get in contact with me on PSN, Xbox Live, Steam, and Twitter as HERJUK. If you want to message me on Epic, then that would be Pop Culture Gamers. Don't forget, you can also visit the show's YouTube channel, youtube.com/popculturegamers. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Twitter on Pop Culture Gamer. There is our Facebook group. There's our Facebook page. You can email us at podcast@popculturegamers.co.uk. And don't forget our other website, anchor.fm/popculturegamers. So, a bit more of a strange episode. You've been hearing me talking for the last 50 odd minutes, so I'm going to let you go now. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Hopefully Steve will be back with me on the weekend. Otherwise, it'll just be another solo show. Hopefully that won't bother you too much. If that's the case, and maybe we might even get Mark back at some point when he's quieting down with his work. So thanks for listening, and it's a good night from me, and it'll be a good night from the other guys as well. Good night.